Want to just share these slides are taken from Ryan Lundquist's presentation that he just put out last week. And so if you want to dive into these numbers deeper, you can definitely check out his video that we'll have in the link below, as well as reach out to us. We'd be happy to dive into these numbers one-on-one. So a couple of quick things to just kind of point out with regard to listings. We are seeing a slight uptick in the number of homes that are coming onto the market. We're still a bit not as high as we were pre-pandemic. As you can see, pre-pandemic, which was really kind of the early start of March, is just slightly higher than where we are at present. And so sellers are coming back onto the market feeling confident about being able to get their home sold at a price that they feel comfortable with. But we're still not quite seeing the number of listings coming on the market as we would expect to see at this time of the year. This graph shows kind of where we would be expecting to see if all things were normal, pre-pandemic normal. And so what we see here is a graph that shows the number of listings in 2019 in blue versus the number of listings in 2020 in red. And so what you see is there's a clear demarcation between the number of listings that are coming out to the market this year versus last year. And it coincides right with the start of the pandemic, and then not so much the pandemic, but the shelter in place order from the governor here in California. And so you see that starting in that early to mid-March point, we start to see a lower number of homes coming on the market, with this valley here from March 15th to about early April, so about a month, mid-April, where we just saw the number of homes coming onto the market really drop significantly relative to the last year. But as you can see here, ever since then, we've started to see the market kind of number of sellers coming on the market, and it's been teetering, but this week and the last week has actually been fairly steady. And so we'll continue to track these numbers to see where they go. With regard to the housing supply, what we're seeing, and it kind of piggybacks on the lower number of homes that are coming to market, is really the tight inventory that we're seeing. So for homes under 400,000, as you can see by this chart here, is that we're looking at inventory in the range of about 0.7, so under a month, to just over a month, at about a month and 1.4 months of inventory. So typically when we talk about a buyer-seller's market, really the one clear marker that we look at is number of months of inventory, meaning that if no new homes came on the market today, how many months would it take to clear the current inventory? And so the cutoff that we typically look to is 7 months. So if we have 7 months or more of inventory, it tends to be a buyer's market. If we have 7 months or less of inventory, we tend to have a seller's market. As you can see, hovering at about 1 month of inventory, it's a very tight seller's market at the moment. And we'll kind of talk about how that plays into the price, and some opportunities that do still exist for buyers within that price range. Looking at the market at the 500,000 and above, what we see is that it's been fairly steady for the most part. Especially kind of at that $500,000, $750,000 range. We saw kind of an uptick at the start of the year, but it's been pretty consistent from February on out. There's a slight dip. So if we look at the start of this year, and so right here, January 1st, 2020, we saw that there was fairly consistent with prior months, and then a slight downturn at the start of March. And then we're seeing an uptick in the number of homes that are coming in the market at the $500,000 to $750,000 level. Similarly, with regard to the $750,000 to $1 million, we're starting to see a pretty consistent upward trend there. And then with $1 million plus homes, you see that there's a pretty significant spike relative to where we were pre-pandemic, and back up to pre-pandemic levels, really looking at where we were at the very start of this year. And so this kind of gives you an idea of where the housing market is. As you can see, we're averaging just over 2 months of inventory at the 5 to 750, just over 4 months at the 750 to 1 million, and we're averaging about almost over 10 months at the $1 million plus mark. When it comes to the number of pendings, what we are seeing, as you can see from this particular chart, is that really starting in late March, we've had a pretty consistent upward trend with a couple of dips here and there, but for the most part, this is almost 9 weeks of continued growth in the number of homes that are going into contract, which is great to see, right? And so what this kind of reflects, and you can see it in this chart here, is that the number of homes that are going into contract versus the number of homes that are coming online, going live every week, we have kind of crossed those paths. So if you look at this kind of orangey tangerine line, you see that it's exceeded the number of homes that have gone into contract have exceeded the number of homes that are coming on the market basically since mid-May. And so we crossed that, meaning there's more buyers than sellers in the market at present. And so for those of you that have been looking, more than likely what you're finding is that homes are kind of going really quick, or that you're finding yourself still in a multiple offer situation, despite kind of all of the anticipation that the pandemic was going to really slow down or drop the pricing with regard to homes a la 2008. It's an extremely different crisis that we're in right now, and very different dynamics that we're facing. And with the market being as tight as it is, we're just not quite seeing that price drop as people had hoped for. And so with that, you see that the weekly sales volume, and this is kind of region wide, so that's Sacramento, Placer, Yolo, and El Dorado County. Again, we saw that dip from that mid-March point up until the first or second week of May, but we've been seeing a pretty consistent uptick in the sales volume year over year. So you see 2020s in this blue, 2019s in this red, and 2018s in the green. If this were a quote unquote normal year, we would tend to see the blue line kind of following this trend up here, but you saw this big kind of gap between where we've been previously, but we're starting to catch up. So we're not too far from where we would have been had this been a non-pandemic year. A couple of final thoughts to wrap this whole thing up. The main thing, as you saw from the graphs, we're showing you in many cases week by week data. And the reason for that is that the market is changing at a week by week basis, right? Typically we would defer to month by month to kind of get a bigger picture, but at this rate, it's just kind of fluctuating up and down. And so we're really going to continue to track this and make sure that we're giving you the latest information. And just remember, a blip is not a trend, right? So once we get a couple of, let's say 3 data points that kind of show that there's a trend in a certain direction, then we can really kind of start calling it more of a trend than a couple of data points at the moment. From there, both listings and pendings are up relative to where they were at the lowest point during the onset of the shelter in place, but listings are still below pre-pandemic levels, right? So we're still seeing a much tighter housing market than we would expect to see absent the coronavirus. So keep that in mind, that if you're out there looking, you might be hitting that refresh, fairly regularly or even week over week, and just not seeing the number of homes that we're expecting to see. I think from the video that Ryan put out just yesterday, that the number of homes now relative to the number of homes that were on the market last year, we're about, there's a 2,000 listing gap. So there's 2,000 less homes that have come on the market, but in the course of, I think even that data was just for the pandemic level, or the period, right? So starting in March, there's 2,000 fewer homes that are on the market, just making it, again, a very kind of tight inventory market. Speaking to that point, the market at the 400 range, under the 400 range, which tends to be the first-time home buyer market, is among the tightest, as you can imagine. And so there you can almost definitely consider yourself being up against multiple offers. So you just want to make sure that your financing is in place so that there's no question that everything's good to go, and talk to your realtor, ideally us, to be able to make sure that we're structuring your deal in the strongest way possible, so that know that it's not always price that ekes it out. And so we're going to make sure to coach you and guide you through that process to make sure that we can get you into contract on the home that you'd like. And from there, again, expect to be in a multiple offer situation, regardless of the price point, but it may just be 1 or 2 other offers. And so just keep that in mind, that it's still a very active market. So if a home is sitting on the market, you may want to kind of have your realtor, us again, reach out to the listing agent to kind of get some more information about what's going on. But know that it's still, for the most part, a very active market, as long as it's priced for the market that we're in right now, not the market that we've been in earlier this year. And really stay tuned. We're going to continue to present data. We're going to continue to just kind of put out information to make sure that you have the latest info, and make sure that you're making decisions based on the most relevant information. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate your support. Hope that you're staying healthy, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.